Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo. I am your keeper, the Harry Channel, and with me tonight are minions Prospero.
Hello.
DrFunctional.
Good evening.
Geodes.
Hello.
And SkepTok.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. I'm hoping we're going to get Serenity, Star 13, and Sora Luna in here at some point. But at the moment they're gone, but late editions are always welcome. We have so much show tonight, we are probably going to run a little bit long, and I'll take the heat for that, but I'd rather not cut any of this stuff that we've got. And we've got a late edition, so we're going to forego a lot of our friendly chit-chat, because we're all friends and we already like each other, and that's fine, and just delve right into it. Does anybody have anything short, just really short, they want to talk about first?
Hello.
Okay. All right, well, here we go. We're just going to get in here because I haven't had a chance to totally review this particular article. That's one reason why I wasn't sure if we'd cover it. But I'm relying on you folks. Biden launches assault on monopolies. He does sound very heroic. Politico seems to like Mr. Biden. The sweeping executive order takes aim at concentrated markets and industries, including agriculture, airlines, broadband, and banking, and includes efforts to lower drug prices and protect privacy. Oh, that sounds great. The White House announced a sweeping executive order Friday to promote competition throughout the U.S. economy in the most ambitious effort in generations to reduce the stranglehold of monopolies and concentrated markets in major industries. Have these people seen Biden's long voting record? Okay, the order, whose details Politico first reported last week, also includes elements designed to lower the price of prescription drugs, protect consumers' privacy, and increase scrutiny of abusive business tactics in the tech industry. The effort marks a major push by President Joe Biden's administration to focus on competition as part of the economic recovery from the pandemic. Now, if that didn't send a chill up or down your spine, this is kind of like one of those things like somebody just walked over my future grave. I mean, okay. I'm not going to belabor the point. Go ahead.
Especially in light of the fact that rumor has it he's not opposed to lockdowns again if there's some other surge. And as we already saw, lockdowns actually favored big bucks. Retail and establishments of some size. This sounds like a campaign promise. A laundry list of campaign promises. And not something that's actually tenable.
No, but it says right here, 40 years ago, we chose the wrong path, in my view, following the misguided philosophy of people like Robert Bork and pull back on enforcing laws to promote competition. I'm with the government and I'm here to help. I don't see... Okay, so in terms of... Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I honestly don't know enough about this because it is fairly new. When he talks about this executive order, all he can really control is what the executive branch does, specifically in terms of purchasing. So unless I'm mistaken here, what I believe this does is he's giving preference in government purchasing to companies which follow a certain set of policies. And it's allowing them, in terms of government purchasing, to take into account factors such as competitiveness. It is very, very, very very easy for him to go that one extra step and basically try to say, oh yes, and this includes critical race theory, or this includes this thing, or this includes that thing. This is the foot in the door to being able to do God knows what.
Yep.
Just my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right because, number one, the man is not fit to speak Robert Bork's name. Number two, they will determine what's fair, and they will determine what's competition. And my understanding of actual competition in the marketplace means the government doesn't have their fucking thumb on the scale. And all this is a big old bag of thumbs.
Yeah, there's a little something here for everybody. One of the things in there is limiting non-compete clauses in employment agreements, which would help a lot of people in Silicon Valley quite a bit. because there's a pretty egregious overreach in terms of these types of agreements. Not my opinion. I've talked to people who actually get paid to know this shit. And a lot of what's in most employment contracts isn't really enforceable anyway, according to the people I've spoken with. But there's that stuff. There's just a ton of stuff that's in here that's designed to supposedly make a lot of people happy. I feel like this is just kind of, let's take a bunch of stuff that sounds good, throw it under the umbrella of competition, and just throw some chum to the waters, because we're getting the sense that the voters really aren't that into us. Because they're pushing ideas like stopping people from having voter ID, which, according to the surveys I've seen, 80% of people in total, and even the majority of Democrats, think that it's completely reasonable to have somebody show ID before they vote. Mm-hmm. So when you're pushing issues that are that unpopular, you need some kind of a big distraction, and this, to me, is probably just that distraction.
Yeah, a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, it's just another. I mean, I hate to be that person, but I'm going to say it. When the executive branch of the government is trying to exert this amount of influence on private businesses, I just smell the more fascism in the water. You'll be able to do business for us and by our rules only.
It seems to be a stark contrast to the previous administration's handling of a similar situation, and not saying, here are the rules, do this, or there's hell to pay. It's like, if you work with us and you do, if you work a little bit better and, if things happen, maybe we can work a little bit more. Maybe the government can do a little bit more purchasing with you, sort of incentivizing rather than immediately going to punishment for noncompliance.
Yeah, well, that's what government does best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just another tool that that various government agencies can use to exert pressure on different businesses. Well, looks like you're not doing this thing. If you want to play with us, you're just going to have to follow our rules. This is the way things are done. It's not as if there isn't a need for competition. I like the idea of increasing competition. I just want to see more specifics about what they really want to do. Because I don't trust them to implement anything remotely resembling anything that any of us would want. I'll be happy if I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about this. Maybe the shift is starting to occur in terms of the Democrats because they realize that the far left of the party is going to drag them to oblivion. And maybe this is just the first sign that they're getting a clue. No, it's not. It's bullshit. It's not going to go well. I can't help but be cynical based on what I'm seeing. I just hope I'm wrong. Okay. Anything else on this before we move on?
I'm going to have to look way into it because there's a lot of...
Yeah, we may have to revisit
to certain
this.
laws.
Yeah, political party's gonna political party.
Yep.
Hello, Serenity.
Hello.
Glad you could make it.
I had to kill zombies.
I've got my fact checker in chief, Serenity, here now. I feel good. Everything is good.
All is well. Hi, Serenity.
I Skep. I Prospero.
Functional.
Functional, if you wouldn't mind keeping an eye on chat for me, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually just linked the White House statement explaining all of this in great detail. It's several hundred pages long. I'm exaggerating. It's probably like 20 pages long. But if people want to dig a little bit more into it themselves, that's the link.
And I actually don't normally do this, but maybe just as an experiment, because YouTube hates us, if people wouldn't mind hitting the like button, it might be interesting to see if that has any effect on things. Mm-hmm. I think it's free, last I checked, so if you don't mind, do hit the like button, please. Okay, so this is going to be one I have to handle carefully so as not to get yeeted from society. Okay, everybody probably already knows about this horrible thing that the San Francisco Gay Choir put out, where they're singing about how they're coming for your children, right?
This shit, okay.
This shit, right, okay. Exactly the right response. Okay, I don't remember who linked this, but it didn't take... Yeah, okay, thank you. It didn't take... why don't you explain what we're looking at, if you don't mind, then?
Okay, so for anybody who knows, I still wander the Tumblr. So I follow a great range of people on Tumblr, and this came across my dash of after they sang this song, 4chan decided to dig into this and go, that seems kind of ironic and predatory. Let's see if any of these mother effers are kitty diddlers or just sex offenders. And, well, there's quite a bunch of them because they not only check their names, but they also check the photographs that are on the sex offender sites to make sure it's not the possibility of like, oh, well, they may just have the same name. No, they literally like this post that I put in the server actually goes down the line and like shows the picture of from the sex offender website and the picture from when they were in the choir roster. So they 4chan did as it always does, which it backed itself up to show like it had its info and it had its info right. But they basically
4chan...
some of them are just like, I hate saying the word just. Some of them were just showy about it and never actually touched anybody, and some of them actually did touch people. So it's a lovely little mixture. But as far as I know, I think that video is actually not online anymore, like the original.
Oh no,
they
yanked that thing, but quickly. So, here's a guy, and then there's some more guys, and of course the tiniest, most unreadable pictures. This guy's a magic reindeer here. Yeah, there's the typical rogues gallery that you'd kind of expect. Lewd or lascivious acts involving a child under 14. Oh, this guy. Okay. Johnny Lee Guidry. Rape by force. That's bad. He's not good. These guys there's a lot of bad people in this choir. Okay. So I'm going to break a little bit, and I have to do this in such a way as not to give away somebody's trust. I know somebody who I've spoken with in the past because their father was in this choir 30 years ago. Now,
back when it was actually groundbreaking.
Yeah. And what was commonly going on in this choir 30 years ago, just to give you an idea of what the inception of this thing was like, is, of course, everybody was sleeping with everybody. That's not a big deal, and none of my business. Don't care about that.
Yeah.
But there was a not insignificant amount of these guys who were in San Francisco. A lot of them had decent incomes, paying to help immigrants move to the U.S. and then striking up some kind of relationship with young boys who were in those immigrant families. And then being surprised that they didn't want to have anything to do with them later after that. Yeah. It was very much sort of a... it was part of their culture. They would talk about chickens and chicken hawks.
Yeah.
And the chicken hawks are the men who were going after the young boys.
What?
So this is a real cultural thing. Now, I have gay friends who would never do this in a million years, who are just, absolutely wonderful people. And this isn't just bullshit. I'm not, this is what people say, well, some of my best friends are XYZ. No, I actually, I know gay people that are not anything like this, but this
me too
community has a history.
30 years in the software industry, you meet
exactly them. Where there are a few bad apples that kind of indemnify, but they are really good examples of this kind of predatory behavior. Yeah. And it used to be that you just sort of import these people, and of course, because there's an imbalance in terms of power, you can get away with a lot of that stuff with the immigrants, some of which were there illegally, et cetera, et cetera. But now they're just, they're saying the quiet part out loud, which is something we say a lot around here. They feel comfortable enough to just sing about how they're coming for your children, all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody really wants that.
It was actually a gay person that taught me what chicken hawk meant.
Yeah.
Way back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yep, same.
And
I learned it tonight.
Yeah, well, surprise.
I figured it was something bad.
Yeah, there are actually two meanings of the word.
Mm-hmm.
There's the it's a little confusing, It's complicated, as they say. But
Well, Wikipedia even has an article, Chicken Hawk, Men Who Love Boys. Also known simply as Chicken Hawk, is a 1994 American documentary film produced, written, and delivered by Unpronounceable in 2011, and it profiles members of the pedophile pederasty organization North American Man-Boy Love Association,
NAMBLA,
who discuss sexual relationships between men and boys below the age of consent. Films an expose of the group's controversial beliefs and its members' clandestine lifestyles. Sideman's even-handed approach provides the audience with an insight into the group members' psyches. It has drawn attention for its unique approach, letting its subjects, the NAMBLA members, incriminate themselves in a public forum. Since its release, the film has been screened for the FBI, University Criminology Department, blah, 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 blah. You know, the term chicken hawk is used in gay slang to refer to an older man who chases after younger males.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily underage, but in reality, a lot of them are underage.
Yeah. But everything else about the article is NAMBLA this, FBI that, NAMBLA this. So, just so you know, and I'm just, gonna.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time dealing in kind of outrage stuff because that's not really what the Saturday show is about. You can get a steady diet of people being outraged about things on the internet from pretty much any place else. So we're going to move on to the next thing.
Excellent.
Okay. Just tread
Sorry,
lightly.
Geodes, you had something?
I was the only thing I was going to add was there was a video I watched earlier from a guy, and it was not the most accurate videos because he was grouping a lot of the gay community in general in with this, but he did make a statement that I thought was fairly on point in terms of, you gotta be careful in terms of like 50 years of goodwill can get burned up pretty fast, and I think it's one of those things where movements like the LGBTQ plus movement or whatever really need to be taking these things a lot more seriously as well. So,
I mean, if you look at their latest polls, they've already burned most of it.
Well, the one thing they've got going for them is I think most people are on board with the idea that it's an immutable characteristic. People really are just kind of born that way, right? And we don't discriminate against people about stuff that they're kind of born with the exception of pedophiles who we tar and feather and run out of town because we don't let people hurt children because your rights kind of cease to be an issue at this point once you start threatening our children. But so I think that all of the important gains are still there, but in terms of that gold star, it's like your reputation is getting tarnished. You guys should not be allowing stuff like this to happen. You guys should do more to clean up your own community because you know who a lot of these guys are. You just don't want to be get in trouble for not being a gold star gay or something because you win against somebody in your own community. No, you need to out these people or help them get counseling or whatever. As long as they don't hurt children, I kind of don't care. I just don't want anybody hurting the children. Anyway, a good thing that happened, and I hope there's a lot more of this, Maryland and Montana passed the nation's first laws restricting law enforcement access to genetic genealogy databases. Yes, people, all of you folks who've been willingly sending off your samples to, 23andMe and all these other sorts of things. Did you know your data was going into a database and that it's not anonymous and that companies and governments have been buying this information?
Or did you know that if your uncle did it, that your information may have been looked at? Because there are, in those databases, familial records.
Yeah, even though they may not have your specific information, they have enough from your direct relatives to draw a pretty good conclusion of what your DNA is going to look like.
Yep.
We've actually sent our DNA to 23 of these.
You better pray, mother effer.
Well, I mean, this is just
quick.
This is one of those things we don't need to spend a lot of time on. I would like to see this happen everywhere. The idea, especially with law enforcement, and I mean, I'm very pro law enforcement, don't get me wrong, but you've got to go through the process. You need a court order for this stuff. To my mind, them buying the information from a private party is no different than them showing up at your doorstep with a swab. You should have a court order. Either way, the process should be identical.
Maryland's law
is ridiculous.
Particularly tough. Montana's has a couple holes in it that law enforcement could use, unfortunately. But the Maryland one and its specifics, if people are interested, that is the much more rigorous standard that law enforcement has to look at, and they have to demonstrably prove that they have gone through CODIS and all other measures. And there's also a barring of getting third-party DNA against consent or any subterfuge in obtaining DNA samples.
I located a 50-page paper done for the Fordham University School of Law. And it is Guilt by Genetic Association, the Fourth Amendment, and the Search of Private Genetic Databases by Law Enforcement. 50 pages, single space, and I'll start with the introduction.
Yeah.
Could you instead perhaps put a link in the chat?
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
Well, while Prospero has
anyway,
Prospero has the talking stick, I believe. I want to move on to the next topic. No, you're fine. You're fine. That was actually good, but I would appreciate it if you'd put the link in the chat.
I'm going to do it right now. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So, another thing from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, something a little different. Supreme Court says you can't sue the corporation that wrongly marked you as a terrorist. Now, this is primarily going to be Prospero talking about this, but why don't you explain this to us and tell us how much it sucks, and then we can open the floor up to broader comments.
Okay. TransUnion was using information obtained from the feds, watch list information. And they weren't doing anything more than looking at first names and last names. And that was a very broad search because that could include Cortez spelled with a Z, Cortez with an S, Cortez as a maiden name. And they were just saying this information is there on their internal records. Not all of that was given to third parties, but all these people were flagged. So if somebody popped into TransUnion and looked up their name, they would see something. And what had happened is, in one instance, both instances involved car dealerships. But in the case that went to the Supreme Court, the gentleman was turned down on the closure of sale because he'd been flagged as he's either terrorist or a drug trafficker or something like that. And he had requested a copy from TransUnion of his credit report, and it didn't include all the information either, which really sucks because you usually have to pay to get a credit report. What TransUnion had been found in the lower courts to have done was, even when people requested their credit report to try to straighten some of this stuff out, were providing incomplete credit reports. Well, Congress had passed a law against credit reporting institutions doing hinky shit like this, and not doing their due diligence. And TransUnion in the first case had been warned to straighten their shit up. So their idea of straightening their shit up was to say, well, this is relying on a federal database, and not all this may be accurate because it's just first and last names, right? Which is great until it had to go back to court because of this man trying to buy his car. And everybody upheld that anyone whose name had been tagged wrongfully had been harmed, whether they had tried to buy a car, a house, or anything else. And the conservative majority of the court decided that only those people who actively had been harmed had any standing in a class action case against TransUnion in federal court.
Where the fuck did that precedent come from? Tell me what cases did they cite?
I'll tell you something. This is a 50-page decision.
Yeah.
I skimmed it. I didn't recognize any of the cases. That doesn't mean anything because I'm not an attorney. But injury in fact,
injury in fact, they were down on the food chain. Those cases were bullshit.
Or selective sentences from cases higher up on the food chain. What I did is I read Thomas's dissent, because when a lion of conservatism like Thomas.
Well, first of all, the first rule is always read Clarence Thomas's decisions and regardless.
Yeah.
But his dissents are the big red Bordeaux of justice.
Well, if you don't want to read the preceding 47 pages or whatever of a decision, and you want to find out where the majority of the court fucked it, read Thomas's dissent, because it was Breyer, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Thomas who dissented. All the others signed off on this. And what they were establishing was unproven harm versus injury in fact. And that was the argument that Kavanaugh made that actual injury in fact had to occur. Thomas, as always, is scathing in his view that is absolutely upending absolutely every bit of common law ever to exist. That one need not prove injury in fact, just that the complainant felt aggrieved. Part of the problem here is it appears that the conservatives are disregarding potential reputational damage as not genuine harm, as opposed to actual financial harm, which is
direct financial harm,
direct injury of some kind. And what's interesting is in the past, the court has upheld that even aesthetic pleasures can be interrupted by intangible harm.
Sure. Lost opportunity.
Yeah, there's an entire case of I think it was the Sierra Club as well as Friends of the Earth versus Laidlaw Environmental Services that went on, and I have taken a couple selections of Thomas's writing just to give you an example of how he argued this. If you don't mind, Harry.
No, go ahead.
And if this sort of confusing and frustrating communication is insufficient to establish a real injury, one wonders what could rise to that level if, instead of falsely identifying Ramirez as a potential drug trafficker or terrorist, TransUnion had flagged him as a potential child molester. Would that alone still be insufficient to open the courthouse doors? What about falsely labeling a person a racist, including a slur on the report? Or what about openly reducing a person's credit score by several points because of his race? None of these constitute an injury in fact. How can that possibly square with past cases indicating that the inability to observe an animal species, even for purely aesthetic purposes, undeniably is? Then he went on to say, had the class members claimed an aesthetic interest in viewing an accurate report, would this case have come out differently? And if some of these examples do cause sufficient concrete and real, though intangible harms, how do we go about picking and choosing which ones do and which do not? I see no way to engage in this escapable inquiry without devolving into policy judgment. Weighing the harms caused by specific facts and choosing remedies seems to me like a much better fit for legislatures and juries than for this court. One of his stronger points, as an aside, was that Congress has written law on this. Why is the judiciary not happy with the law? There's nothing that violates the Constitution in that law. But that's what they've done. They've inserted themselves basically between legislation that Congress passed, holding companies like TransUnion to a particular standard, and said, well, gee, this really isn't actual injury. And then finally, this is Thomas writing again, finally, it is not just the harm that is reminiscent of a constitutional case or controversy, so too is the remedy. Although statutory damages are not necessarily a proxy for unjust enrichment, they have a similar flavor in this case. TransUnion violated consumers' rights in order to create and sell a product to its clients. Reckless handling of consumer information and bungled responses to requests for information served as a means to an end, and the end was financial gain. TransUnion could not confirm that a single OFAC alert, that's what the Office of Foreign Activities and what the people that report terrorism alert sold to its customers was accurate. Yet thanks to this court, it may well be in a position to keep much of its ill-gotten gains. Ultimately, the majority seems to pose to the reader a single rhetorical question: who could possibly think that a person is harmed when he requests and is sent an incomplete credit report, or is sent a suspicious notice informing him he may be a designated drug trafficker or terrorist, or is not sent anything informing him of how to remove the inaccurate red flag? The answer, of course, is legion: Congress, the president, the jury, the district court, the Ninth Circuit, and 4 members of this court. I respectfully dissent.
Yeah. Good job,
All
Clarence.
Yeah. I mean, Congress is against the court in this. The president signed that legislation. And for some reason, I have a feeling they're not happy about class action suits. And that this was a way for them to strike a blow against class action suits. Now, this has no standing in state court.
I was just going to say, this is for federal cases.
Yeah, this is for federal cases, and it's a shit precedent. It's an absolute shit.
It'll get cited in state courts, though.
It'll get cited in state courts, but it doesn't have standing per se, because
they'll use it to bolster
Mhm.
the their narrative that they're presenting to the judge. And
you find a Fourth Amendment judge to hear your case in a lot of states.
Yeah, you hear him,
TransUnion
Judge.
is still in a lot of trouble in a lot of states.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
people, that
But this is an absolutely outrageous miscarriage of justice. Absolutely outrageous act by the Supreme
I'm
Court.
stunned Alito bit on this.
Yeah, basically the Supreme
it's
Court just
really
told these
disappointing.
people who were falsely branded as being terrorists and drug dealers to walk it off.
Yeah. Now this was not public
I love that. I love
information, but that doesn't matter. And also,
Yeah.
they weren't told that it had been done. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
we've had to add this to your credit report. And when TransUnion, the original time they were told to stop this shit, all they did to indemnify themselves was say, well, we can't guarantee accuracy.
Yeah.
What the
That's
fuck?
great.
That's a legal non-statement.
Yeah, it is.
That
Of
is
course.
as close to breathing air silently as you can legally.
Yeah. And it's
It's like a
this
guy
is
getting
stunning.
caught cheating on his wife and him saying to her, well, you knew the kind of guy I was when you married me.
yeah.
But I
You
think
know-
you've identified the various vectors of suck, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. If
I'm
you-
a
Yeah.
snake. It is my nature.
But
Okay.
this is really aggravating. It is going to be cited out the ass in class
Yep.
actions.
And that's why we took the time to. I know it's a little dry for some people, but that's why we took the time to highlight it, because we like to cover the stuff that's important that maybe you haven't heard about from anybody else. And there you go.
But law clerks who
News
work
you
for
can
some of these
use.
justices need to be taken out to the woodshed, because I have a feeling most of them were dozing, or the oral argument presentation absolutely sucked.
Yeah, this was not in the mainstream news much, if at all. But this is the kind of stuff that really matters, that's going to influence your life. So anyway, enough about patting
have a
ourselves
real
on the back for covering this.
And fuck credit reporting unions.
Yeah,
Yep.
amen. Says
And
preacher.
fuck
Okay.
TransUnion. TransUnion ought to be run out of business for the.
In the ass.
Yeah.
Yes, but don't replace TransUnion with a government credit system. Or
Oh
that's-
Christ, no!
If
Yeah,
you
because that
know
was last
somebody-
week, and we're not looking for that.
If you know
Just
somebody
me.
who has any welding projects ongoing, go and help them out. You never know. That's all I'm going to say. So
Okay, you mad.
Just be
lad.
glad I
All
didn't
right.
drill into all the supporting evidence for Kavanaugh's side, or y'all would just be bored shitless.
Yeah, that's a good conversation.
Of course, you know there's
FBI
some,
muscles up against hackers with breaches going bananas, in quotes. For the last several years, FBI agents debated turning the tables on hackers by remotely accessing breached computer networks and booting out the attackers caught in mid-hack. They got their chance earlier this year after state-backed Chinese hackers compromised thousands of private Microsoft Exchange email servers. We covered this in a previous show. In response, an FBI special agent petitioned a Houston federal judge on April 9th for authorization to remotely access hundreds of hacking victims' computer networks and block the attackers' digital points of entry. To put more simply, the FBI out-hacked the hackers. And the fact that they were able to do this is, to the people on this panel that know about computer security stuff, is more than a small matter of concern. A lot of this has to do with people running their own Microsoft Exchange servers. Microsoft and security, it's not like they don't try, but there's just so much stuff built into the way Microsoft stuff works that makes it difficult. It all goes back to things like the COM driver. Look, I can cut and paste things between Excel and Word. Isn't this great? Yeah, the way they do that kind of opens you up to all kinds of problems. And that's just like the first thing I can think of.
yeah, that's what became ActiveX and all the other stuff.
So it says here, FBI was definitely decided to be more aggressive against, let's see, our toolkit hasn't changed. We're just using the tools a little bit more. Other examples of the FBI's Feister posture? I've never heard that
Feistier.
word. Feistier. Oh, thank God.
Feistier
Posture
posture.
includes a joint FBI National Security Agency operation to disrupt a Russian cyber espionage campaign and the FBI's recent successful clawback of cryptocurrency paid to hackers in the Colonial Pipeline Company ransomware attack. I mean, we did sort of applaud that because those wankers deserve to get their pee-pee whacked. 8 months removed from the election, the government's emboldened approach has surfaced publicly after a rash of devastating hacks, including the Colonial Pipeline breach and ransomware, yada, yada, yada. Now, I thought when former Vice President Joseph Biden sat down with Vladimir Putin that he said, no, you cannot attack these certain things. And he gave them like a whole list of really vulnerable infrastructure that we didn't want to have hacked.
Yeah,
Shouldn't that have taken care of it?
well, and also one could let's just do the conspiracy theory rabbit hole just for a second. So he gives him a list. Vlad passes it on to the hackers. The hackers do that. The FBI looks like they all wear white hats. The FBI smells like a rose, and all of a sudden we realize that the FBI can fuck around in our computers. I mean, it's great that they can put on a white hat and do this, but if you don't think they can't put on a black hat and do this, and given the number of times they've been caught wearing black hats lately, and if you even mention the NSA being involved in this,
Oh,
Yeah,
grey hat-
Jesus
grey
Christ.
hat
I did.
hacking is a thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's
Well, I mean, also the fact that most of their hackers were caught by them being black hat hackers.
Yeah,
And
you
that's how
can
they
go to
got the
prison or you
job.
can work for us.
Yeah,
I know.
like,
yeah.
these are highly compromisable people. In other
Oh, yeah.
words, and I just look. I'm really glad. Like it was like her, yay! They got them. They got some of their Bitcoin back. This is great. But at the same time, another chilling bit of information.
Yeah. Well, it's like what was it? What was it? Dave. What's his last name? It's Computing Forever. Way
Cullen.
back when.
Oh, the
Dave
guy
Cullen.
from Ireland.
yeah.
Dave
Cullen.
Cullen.
Dave
Cullen.
Cullen.
Okay. Yeah, Dave Cullen, way back when, this was years ago, he mentioned the fact that there was an article that came out where it was either, I think it was from Motherboards, the government was actually trying to pass legislation to try to force these companies like that produce certain types of hardware to create back doors into the hardware and stuff. So this is something that's been going on for a very long time. So
Okay. We do not have time to get into just the stuff I know off the top of my head about this particular topic. Sorry, Serenity. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I was about to say the same thing. It's like the stories have popped up for years since computers have become much more mainstream about the government keeps trying to do that, trying to say, oh, you have to make a backdoor, or, oh, we don't actually have to get a warrant for their cell phone. We just have to ask Apple to unlock the phone, that kind of stuff. Like these stories are forever ongoing.
And so just imagine if you're trying to get a nice little government contract under those new rules that Biden is going to put into play. And one of the things they say is, big monopoly corporation, if you play ball with us on these back doors that the FBI and the NSA could get into, it's for the terrorists, don't you know? It would be helpful. You don't think that's not going to happen?
Nice little company you got there. Hate to see something happen to it.
This is the same administration that is threatening to withhold highway funds from suburbs, well, basically states that allow suburbs to have building codes that would prohibit high-density housing.
Yeah.
Let that just sink in for a bit. But I'm going to derail my own show here. Hold on. Let's see. So, but the bolder tactics could also lead to abuses. Several civil liberties experts said, gee, you think? Executing a warrant to remotely access computer networks raises questions about how network administrators are notified. And the ways such tools can be abused.
Ex post facto, when they find their neighbor has been arrested. That's how they're notified.
Executive Director and General Counsel for the Electronic Frontier Foundation. In the Microsoft Exchange case, FBI agents told the court that they planned to send an email to the to the address each victim provided when they had last registered their domain with a web registrar, but would do so 30 days after gaining entry. Let me let you in on a little clue, people. There used to be this thing called the Internet, and this is where all the addresses lived. Now there's lots and lots of different web registrars for domain names. Yeah. And most of the people who register things, or many of them at least, don't actually provide easily actionable email addresses for these things. Sending an email to the abuse@foo.com address in hopes that that's going to find its way to an administrator is ridiculous. It almost never works. As somebody who spent far too much time contacting people saying, by the way, did you realize your network is a source of annoying spam? Please make them stop. Nearly all of those contact things fall on deaf ears. I know it's in the ICANN regulations that they're supposed to actually work. And you have to confirm them a couple times a year, et cetera, et cetera.
But somebody has to sign that it has been looked at.
Yeah, this is not going to be a very successful operation, because essentially what you'll have to do, what you would need to do would be approach each of the domain registrars, of which there are many, and get them to unmask the records of all of those people that were there so they could get through all of the privacy protection stuff that's in the registration. Because I know this is going to come as a shock to people. The spammers figured out fairly quickly that having a database with a bunch of people's fax numbers, phone numbers, addresses, and emails was just a little too juicy to have lying around. So they would send phishing mail and spam and all this other stuff. So they've quickly realized to make that data a lot less useful. It's the WHOIS command. TCP UDP port 46, or is it 43? Anyway, it's a problem. It's a problem. But I'm derailing my own show again. Here we go.
There we go.
So a small Maryland town essentially went offline because of a ransomware attack.
Yay, that's nice.
Let's look and see if there's any keywords here that just sort of pop up. Everything shut down. You couldn't open any document. You're completely locked from all your files. I don't know. I'm starting to wonder what kind of system this might be. Yeah, so basically they're running Windows with a document management system, and it got hacked, and the ransom was $70 million dues.
Okay, and at that point, you look at the land value of your town and go, and we're just going to start over. We kept paper records. You
Yeah,
know,
just
we're a small enough town.
$45,000 per computer.
Nuke it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can hire a lot of college interns to basically show up for the summer and recreate every lost document.
And yeah, that. It would be, as long as they were doing routine backups, I'd just get a new system, restore from the old backup, and send a notification out to all the residents saying any business that you did at town hall, we're going to need confirmation on certain stuff.
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
I know
It
it's
is easier said than done. And
how
any
small the
backup,
town is.
any
if it's-
backup that has not been tested to see if you can restore it in a
Yeah.
disaster recovery situation
Exactly.
isn't worth the bits that it's written on.
Oh yeah, but
Exactly.
one would, maybe these people were smart and they had a disaster recovery plan. You never
Maybe.
know. It is government, but it could be like a small town out in Western Maryland with one guy who retired from teaching computer science, who at least did that for them.
Yeah.
The population is
Skep
only
and I will show
3,700.
up. Skep and I will
3,700
show up.
people.
We've got
Yeah.
a package
Yep.
we'll put together for you to take care
Yeah,
of all
exactly.
That you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if the town,
Sorry, Serenity. What were you saying?
3,700 people in the town.
yeah, that is a
$70
managing-
million. That is a bit of overreach.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a big old no, and you just
It's a nice little
No.
town you got here. It'd be a shame if all your government
Well,
computers.
it's one of those things. The only thing they're known for is for an oyster shucking contest, like an annual one. They're not even near a major city that they could have held them ransom for. Like if they were near Boston or something like that, I can understand, because you can catch the people who live in who don't want to live in Boston but work there and catch them. There's
Yeah.
no major city near them. There is one airport, and it's like an hour away. Like there was I guess they were just trying. I don't know. I mean, it's it's out near the Potomac River, which is
yeah. What's the name?
Washington.
What's the name of the town?
Leonardtown.
Minard Town.
Leonard.
Oh, Leonard Town. Oh, okay. Haha. Okay, so
It's
maybe
it's
they were
out.
just-
It's out near the Poxton River Naval Air Museum and all that kind of stuff.
Oh.
Patch River.
With
Well,
all these.
Okay.
Poxitony.
Go ahead, Gio.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
it's one of those things where you see a couple in their 40s. One of them is like, "Hey, honey, you want to go with me to the bank? I think I found another receipt." Just kind
My grandfather was like that. Don't.
With all these
like
cyber
that.
attacks, though, it's Skynet.
Oh Jesus Christ! This really is in
Bumfuck nowhere.
Yeah.
yeah. There
Yeah.
may
The government employees were like 16 employees.
Yeah.
there could be some retired folks from Annapolis that moved down there to be
Maybe.
on the water. But yeah, because Waldorf, Maryland doesn't count as a town.
No.
I mean, it doesn't.
like I
Well-
said, the next largest city is Washington D.C. That is the next largest city to it, and it's like 4 hours away.
Wow.
It's not that long, really.
I
Trust me.
know.
All right. Well,
It's
Geode's
really
mentioned
I've
banking,
been
so
out
I'm
in
going to take that
Tidewater,
as
Maryland.
I'm going
Yeah.
to take that as a segue.
Or-
So, Skep, I don't know what this
Segue.
means, but I know it means something. Tell me what this means. Wells Fargo to close all personal lines of credit. Now,
Right.
when I read through this, the first thing that popped into my mind was I think they might be afraid of upcoming changes in credit guidelines that are going to come from the government. And they just want to have as few unrecoverable bad loans as possible. That's just the
Right.
evil, cynical part of me. I mean, what's your take on this?
No, they're definitely running away from some risk here. They think that the government's going to come through, print more money, make the happiness happen. Biden's
so-
a complete pushover for anybody with that agenda.
Mhm.
So it says the Wells Fargo is shutting down all existing personal lines of credit and not offering the consumer lending product anymore. The product, which usually gave users $3,000 to $100,000 in revolving credit lines, was pitched as a way to consolidate higher interest credit card debt, pay for home renovations, or avoid overdraft fees on linked checking accounts, the report said. Customers have been given a 60-day notice that their accounts will be shuttered, according to the report. Wells Fargo did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for comment. The move comes more than a year after the bank suspended home equity loans, given the economic uncertainty fueled by the COVID-19 pandemic. The
Oh, you know
fallout
what else?
That's drawing those lines.
Yeah, you know what else they're doing?
Pandemic
Here?
risk.
What?
Yeah, they're trying to understand what their bad debt risk is,
Mhm.
and they're trying to shine up that figure a little bit and get a better understanding. And they're doing this really for planning reasons. And yeah, one of those plans might be to reorganize, protect it from creditors. You know, the classic reorg bankruptcy, or I don't think they're going to liquidate. They got so much. There's so many assets. They. Wells Fargo is bigger than many countries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a gigantic organism, financial organism, and but it may get torn to pieces and broken up. But,
Yeah, that pandemic debt, though, those credit cards that people were running up.
oh yeah,
If they consolidated in these home equity lines, they also don't want to be in the wholesale repo business because
oh god, no.
Yeah, this helps them renegotiate terms with people of good standing and shake the shit off their shoes for the people who aren't.
Yeah.
I think I'm mentioning this just because I want people to keep an eye open and see if they see more stuff like this, not necessarily with Wells Fargo, but with other banks, because I think we're going to see a lot more of this crap.
Yeah, I'm going to cruise over to Yahoo Finance here.
So just keep
not,
your
not
head
while
on
I'm
a
on the
swivel.
screen. Yeah, and just start setting up some alerts.
Well, speaking of heads, here's one.
Oh, God.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warns of absolutely catastrophic hit to economic recovery this summer if U.S. can't pay its bills on time. This
I
is
love
such
the
a
picture.
great stock photo picture. I
God.
love this picture
Doesn't she
so
rem-
much.
She reminds me.
I want that picture.
guys.
She reminds me of Helen Thomas, the grand
She's a
dame of press
shitster.
conferences. Yeah,
You brought Goyim into this house.
yeah. I mean,
I mean, that's even worse than this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even this is no.
Ugh.
That go
I don't know. That's awful.
It's not.
That's,
Looks
Yeah,
like an
let's change that
overcooked
back.
chicken McNugget.
that's
oh God, Jesus.
I'm confused. Pumpkin
Okay.
head.
Techie month.
Yeah, it would be a big problem if we stop paying our bills. On Wednesday, Secretary Yellen asked Congress to extend a July deadline to pay back some of the federal debt. Gosh, wouldn't that be convenient? Without an extension, she warned of a catastrophic default that could hurt economic recovery. Some in the GOP have signaled they want spending cuts in exchange for increasing the debt ceiling. Well, you know, it's good to want things.
There's
Yeah.
there's
Go
a
ahead.
rate. There's a rate that is getting away from them. They have to stay at a certain ratio, which I will not go into here. As far as how much debt they're supporting their reserve requirements, and there are some other requirements that they have to make. And what they want is a break on those regulations. And if they don't get that, they're going to get squeezed in about a month.
Yeah. Well, we spent all this money, and now unless you just pay the money to keep that money moving,
Yeah.
then
We never
everybody's
had a
dick is going
plan.
to fall off.
No,
Yeah.
we never had a plan for getting way below the debt ceiling. We never had a plan for that. You know, offering a politician the chance to spend money. Are you kidding me? Debt
Yeah.
ceiling, my ass. Debt ceiling is when the currency starts to fall apart. That's what these assholes have decided.
Well,
It's just sick.
they didn't send me here to do nothing. It's like, no, I would totally send somebody to Washington
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
nothing.
That's the
I would-
libertarian platform.
That would be outstanding. Please. Here's a nice comfortable chair. It's got like a little foot massager thing. Can we bring you a beverage, sir?
We have a lively gaming community here at the White House.
One with an umbrella, please.
The shuffleboard, canasta, lawn bowling, whatever. I'll happily give you $200,000 to go there and do not a goddamn thing. If there's a declaration of
Absolutely.
war needed, you'll have to dust yourself off and go in and vote. Other than that, just anyway, I'm going full libertarian. Sorry.
So as someone
No,
who's
no,
not
no.
really an
I'm
economics
with you.
guy,
I was enjoying the ride.
this is on the heels of things like we were just talking about, bad debt that was acquired by the government, and the stark inflation rates of recent time with the printing of money. Like, all of this is contributing to the debt, right?
Well, they're
Because it's
spending money
devaluing-
they don't have. The debt
In addition
is
to that, I
contributing
mean.
to the debt is contributing to the inflation rate, and insofar
okay.
as the inflation rate influences the long-term interest rates, it can cycle back and make the debt more expensive to service.
Okay.
Of course it does.
Because it has to do with people's long-term expectations. Now, depending on which economist you're talking to, they will tell you that what they said about short-term versus long-term really matters. People often will not respond to a price change if they think it's a short-term thing. And the oil companies make lots of money off
Yeah.
of this. They play people like a fiddle. All the time in terms of how they manipulate wholesale oil prices, and it goes up really fast and comes down really slowly. It's amazing how that works. But that's a topic for another time. No, you're absolutely right. It all basically kind of relates to everything else. And if the amount of money that the government has to pay people in order to buy government bonds to finance all this stuff, if it goes up a lot, we are actually really screwed, because that debt payment money cuts into the actual budget that the government has. They're enjoying the incredibly low rates right now, because what you're saying is, in exchange for a fairly small return on investment, you have an almost guaranteed return, because the U.S. government is one of your safer bets in the world. And that's why foreign governments put as much of their surplus cash into U.S. Treasury bonds as they do.
Yep.
Anyway, I know
I was just
Skep will say
picturing that
something
flow
if I
chart in
say
my head,
something wrong.
wondering which arrows are facing which way, and
They bid the price of the bonds, the yield of the bonds down, is what I mean. The yield of the bonds down so far that they effectively act almost like a debt arbitrage house. What is the real value of capital? It's about the actual immediate future value of the capital. Well, it's just a dime less than that number.
Nice. Well, let's move on to the next thing, because this is making me sad. So there was an article that was put out here in CNBC. Now, the original title of this was "The Upside to Inflation: Rising Wages." And I noticed today that it has apparently changed the title to it's not certain rising wages will be enough to outpace inflation.
They didn't like the comments, I guess, on their last article.
It's like,
Or being dragged on Twitter by everybody and their brother for the last.
It's like
headline.
being on the Titanic and saying, well, the ship may be going down by the stern, but it or by the bow, but it really is a nice rocking motion, don't you think?
the stern's still above water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the view from here is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Look at that
Let's see.
water. It's getting closer.
so he's an expert because he has a lot of life experience that I should listen to. Okay.
Right, exactly.
So there's a bunch of stuff in here that I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this, except inflation is a problem, and the fact that they're talking about it on something like CNBC, which is pretty left-wing, means that we're not covering for Joe on this shit anymore.
Yeah, I think there's a
Because
little bit of
the
pushback
mainstream
here.
people are talking about it.
The other thing is they're being told by the far left that the far left speaking, we're taking over the party. We're the future. They're the past. We've got your back. We'll give you political cover on this.
Yeah.
You can go for Biden. It's time to take down the old fool.
They're just going to use this, though, as an opportunity to blame Trump again. They're going to say it was his fault that he set the stage for this.
They've got to get 2 years out of him. That is their plan. That was their plan. I'm not. I know we're really rabbit holing here, but is Kamala the future or not? Maybe she's the past.
I think she's going to be thrown under the bus soon.
Yeah, I think there's a movement within the Democrats. They realize that catering to the hard 10% of their party is not going to go well for them. And that's why they were doing this. Hey, let's throw everybody a little something with this executive order on competition. It's a distraction. But mostly I think it's a way they can just further weaponize various parts of the government. Because you get somebody like an Elizabeth Warren in, Pocahontas, and she can use any kind of department like that, and use a rule like that as just a shakedown technique. And that's what they've done. It looks like you're not taking care of consumer privacy and consumer credit properly. It'd be a shame if something happened to this company. And then they let them off the hook. It might be something as small as just hiring one of their friends or changing a policy or any number of different ways it can be corrupted. But it's just you're giving the government a club to beat businesses over the head with. All right. So inflation, wages going up. Who would have thought? And COVID, everything is just going beautifully, isn't it? Because I think this is from Canada, right? Financial Post?
Yes.
Except this is international. They're saying COVID-19 has pushed 22 million people out of the job market in major economies. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's far more than the number of people who died.
People is it's a nation of what, 330 million people? It's a pretty significant percentage.
There are European nations with smaller populations than that. So,
Yes, there are. There are, as a matter of fact.
Well, they're talking globally in major economies, not in Canada. But
Right.
we are one of those major economies that have taken a huge hit in the labor market. A lot of people have lost startups, small businesses, and even just their ability to be in the job market due to displacement from homes, displacement from cities.
Well, let's listen to what the nice Canadian people have to say in the Financial Post. Labor markets in developed nations have recovered only half of the loss of employment they suffered in the pandemic. So recovered half of the loss. With the young and low-skilled hurt most. Because these are the people that actually represent the most risk to you as an employer. You don't know what you're getting for your money a lot of times with people in those positions. Let's see. That's the conclusion of a 400-page study from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which found that 22 million jobs disappeared by the end of 2020 in industrial nations. The Paris-based institution said a full recovery to pre-pandemic levels of employment wouldn't come until the end of next year. The findings indicate that the coronavirus accelerated a number of trends that started over the past decade, including growing income inequality, a shift toward more technically demanding jobs, and fewer secure employment opportunities for lower-skilled workers. Now, that is a real mouthful. A lot of things were accelerated in terms of the technical stuff. Certainly, workflow has become more technical for a lot of people.
Oh my gosh,
a lot of the things that people did to work remotely, for instance, didn't just change where people were working, but how people were working. And if you don't know how to work in that kind of environment, that's going to be a problem. But there were a number of businesses that were kind of on the edge too. That I'm sure there were many restaurants that weren't doing that well, because there's always restaurants that aren't doing that well. It's a really risky business that got pushed over the edge by COVID. So not every business that was destroyed by COVID was necessarily a bad thing. Some of it's going to be just creative destruction. But the vast majority of these people just got screwed by the fact that they essentially were prevented from running their business. And there are long-term effects of it. It would be great if we actually had a president who really understood how to get business moving. One with like a proven track record of economic growth. Oh, never mind. What am I talking about?
What's the matter with you?
I know. Anyway, so
somebody like Rand Paul, who's surgeon, successful businessman, amazing guy all around.
So what are we going to do with all those people?
Well, we're going to just give them money. Fourth stimulus.
I like money.
Go away. I have 4 articles left this month. Fourth stimulus check update. $2,000 monthly payment petition hits 2.5 million signatures. Because in sort of the hold my beer category, why should we just get checks every now and then when we could essentially just get UBI for the duration of the COVID pandemic? I mean, that's what I think I'm reading here, right? A petition for calls for $2,000 monthly payments for adults and $1,000 monthly payments for children. Why the fuck are we sending $1,000 to children? Anyway, throughout the end of the health crisis, it's garnered a steady stream of supporters over the past year, but recently it's seen an uptick in signatories. In just a little over a week, the petition gained 100,000 signatures, going from 2.4 million to 2.5 million. That would be what happens if you had 100,000 signatures. Yeah, that's pretty good math. It previously took about 3 weeks for the petition to go. Oh, good God, shut up, people. The fact that this petition even exists and that we're paying attention to it kind of makes me sick.
It's silly.
This is just silly, and Newsweek is covering this like it's a real story.
It's because Newsweek is silly. They've been silly for a good while.
Yeah,
I mean, people who were talking about the negative long-term effects of these lockdowns were calling for all this stuff many moons ago, and our betters didn't listen. So now these are I can somewhat empathize with these people because they're desperate.
Well, there are unemployment benefits and there are jobs available. It's not like we're saying you can't get unemployment, but the idea that we're just going to give you that until the crisis is completely and 100% over, we're just going to give you $2,000 a month plus $1,000 for each kid. Yeah. I mean, think about this. You're in you get some single mom, sort of the stereotypical welfare mom. She's living there. The state is the de facto father. She's got 5 kids. She's going to be pulling in 7 large to just do nothing.
Yeah. And not incentivize her to pull up those bootstraps.
Yeah, COVID's going on. It's like, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm going to go to the market and cough on some people. It's like, I want this thing to go on forever. To me, this is just the tip of a UBI push. Mm-hmm. I don't see this as ever ending in their opinion.
I agree with you. I think they will say, hey, this is working well. Let's standardize it and make it a thing.
Why wait for post-scarcity? We can have constant lack of safety.
We can have scarcity right now.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for post-scarcity. We want it right now. Okay.
Yeah.
There's actually a story I can tell here a little bit. So my dad worked with this guy, and one day he ended up going over to the guy's house, and this guy had this giant 3-bedroom house with a car and a very nice boat and everything. And my dad knew that he was making the same amount of money he did, and he was like, there's no way you can afford all this. How are you doing this? And the guy more or less told him, oh no, don't worry, it's not about how much money you make. It's about making the payments. And it turns out he was just doing loans the whole time. And it's just like, yep, Keynesian economics is a weird thing.
Yeah, it is. I once had a car dealer try to add a year of payments onto a car loan. And then when I caught them doing it, they said, oh, well, the payment's the same. What do you care?
What?
No, I'm not kidding. I would never make up something like that. They literally tried to add an extra year of car payments onto an auto loan.
Jesus.
When you told them, when you explained no, and that was a complete sentence, what did they do?
I just said, I think there's only one of us here who's really good at mathematics, and I'm pretty sure it's neither of you. And I just said, give me one good reason why I shouldn't walk out of here and tell every person I know what a bunch of thieves you are. And then I explained to them that it was in their best interest to start making me happy instead of angry. And we reached an agreement. But
Were you really that happy?
I was pretty happy.
You're pretty happy. Well, that's good.
I got a little something out of it. It was okay. Yeah. So screw these people and no. So more. And this is a block of things I'm just loosely calling "It's the economy, stupid." San Francisco's organized shoplifting surge prompts Target to cut operating hours.
We surrender. I don't blame them. I do not.
On
blame
Yeah,
them
on
I'm
at
the
all.
heels of
That's about
Walgreens.
employee safety.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure how reducing the hours does anything more than staunch the bleeding. It's like, okay, well, if people are robbing us
No,
blind,
that-
if we were open fewer hours of the day,
No.
maybe we
Let-
wouldn't lose
let
as
me-
much money. I'm just being
Maybe
a
I
dick.
can. No,
Go
no,
ahead.
This is the conversation that happened. Insurance guy shows up and said, "Hey, these employees leaving here at these hours of the night, coming in at these hours of the morning, is a problem actuarially. You are going to have to adjust your hours." And Target said, "Okay," because the only penalty that the insurance company has is cancellation of your policy and rendering Target uninsurable. I am sure that this is insurance driven. I guarantee you this came from insurance money there.
Well, it could also just be because of the store losses. And I think
Yeah,
possibly,
yeah, and they're under a
the-
lot of financial pressure anyway. Exactly.
and they're having trouble getting people to actually cover the shifts. I think this might be a way of dealing with the fact that there's a labor shortage as well. If you're open fewer hours, you don't need as many people.
That's a self-inflicted labor shortage.
It is. So let's just indulge them for a moment here, the fine
Okay.
folks at Newsweek. The company said there has been such an alarming rise in crime in their San Francisco stores that they will reduce nighttime hours. Target also added that San Francisco is the only city in the country where its store's new closing time will take effect. The early closures of Target stores in San Francisco's financial district follow similar moves made by 7-Eleven and Walgreens locations in the city due to increased retail thefts. Now, I think it doesn't take a whole lot of video of people on bicycles carrying trash bags into which they're emptying merchandise and then just driving out the door on their bikes with all this merchandise kind of gets people's attention. I've heard that person that was in that video that I think most people have probably seen was actually apprehended by the police. And
Are they
the
gonna do a
mayor
statute
has
to him?
actually asked the district attorney, given the district attorney 10 days to basically come up with an answer as to what they're going to do about this. So how bad a district attorney do you have to be for Mayor London Breed of San Francisco to start to be annoyed with you?
Holy cow!
It's like you've eaten one too many crayons. We need to sort of put a stop to this because San Francisco is a very, very, very liberal town in a very liberal state. And you know it's bad when the mayor of San Francisco is starting to lose patience with the DA.
Yeah,
Tell them to
Because
stop
they are looking
smelling
at
markers.
serious... Sorry?
Tell them to stop smelling those markers.
Yeah. Hey, when I was a kid, I had those markers. They were supposed to be non-toxic, but the purple one smelled like grape, and the red one smelled like red, and the orange one smelled like orange. Those were great.
led to an adolescence of glue sniffing.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
But you were you were saying, Harry, that's going to be some.
Well, I think the situation in San Francisco is reaching the point where even San Francisco is starting to lose patience with itself.
Yeah,
It's
I
going
agree.
to be very much keep your eyes open on this, because the main problem that San Francisco has, other than just homelessness, is that the communities themselves have entirely too much power in order to fight what they refer to as gentrification. But what the rest of us would just say is reality, the future.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's stuck in time without a deep cleaning schedule is what's happened to San Francisco. It's very bad.
Right.
Sorry, Serenity, you were going to say something?
Well, no, I just found out something very interesting.
Go
So, the district attorney for San Francisco is Chesa Bowden. It's a guy.
Yep.
His
Of course.
His adoptive father is Bill Ayers.
Bill Ayers.
Ayers, yes.
Imagine
Oh,
my
good
shock. Oh, I
Lord.
know who he is. I know.
Yep.
I mean, I've run into him. That's
For those in the chat who don't know why everyone's like, what? That is Bill Ayers is essentially the leader of Weather. He is, period. What the leader of Weather Underground, a militant group. And if you think you've heard that name before, Google it.
Two co-leaders. Yeah,
Yep.
that's absolutely right. That was when I was in college. He was at trial the year before I got there as a freshman.
Yeah, he's a piece of work. So that would probably explain Chessa. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right. Is the way he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not even going to try to read into the rest of his career because that alone tells me what I need to know.
Yeah. Anyway, it's screwed. It's screwed up. And anybody who thought that Walgreens and Target and all these other companies were just going to sit there and take it indefinitely for the privilege of doing business in San Francisco is nuts, because there's a point where they just can't afford to keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
They price themselves out of the market.
And then the complaint's going to be, I don't understand why all these neighborhoods are underserved. They're in a XYZ desert where there's nothing there. It's like,
Harry, when the San Francisco real estate market starts to contract a little bit, oh my God, wait till you have about 0.25% difference. Watch and see what happens. It will absolutely devolve into panic almost immediately, I predict.
Fire Festival 2023.
Not quite, but
yeah.
Or you're going to have the moment of all these big businesses move out, and then the Dollar Generals move in to the really or at least very close to the very expensive neighborhoods, and they'll get all Twitter pated because they'll be like, oh, "How dare you be here? Get out!"
Yeah, the thing is, what I was talking about was not a complete collapse of the real estate market, but what would happen would be a sharp correction to the tune of 15 or 20%. What happens is everybody's credit falls apart. Nothing makes financial sense. Business deals fall apart. It has a lot of ripple effects. That's what I was trying to convey.
Yeah, I really, I mean, one of the things that I originally, when I started this week, way back in Sunday, I was originally thinking we were going to be talking about homelessness because it's an issue that I really want to talk about, but that's not the way the news cycle sort of worked out, and it isn't just about me. But we are going to be coming back to this topic. Maybe on a Tuesday show would be a better time to get into a deep dive on homelessness. Because it doesn't really fit with the Saturday show format all that well. But we are going to be coming back to this often.
It's a label that covers a lot of territory. That's the problem.
We're going to keep moving forward because it's not like this is the last time this is ever going to come up. All right. Now, moving right along. Prosecutors charge Trump organization with 15-year tax scheme. Now, I believe the comment I put in the plan was, somebody get my fainting salts. This is a huge, huge, huge nothing burger. Yep. Stuff like this happens all the freaking time. And all it ever ends up being is, you owe taxes plus penalties on this money.
I mean, didn't Obama's people do this too? And he got like a slap on the wrist?
Everybody does stuff like this. This is the gray area where you basically get, even major accounting firms will say, look, there's a gray area here. You should try to get as much as you possibly can. In this case, what they were doing was giving compensation to employees, but they were treating it as a business expense rather than compensation. So the person who was receiving the compensation didn't have to pay taxes on it. It was supposed to be compensation for some sort of business-related expense. In a nutshell, that's what we're talking about. And this kind of stuff happens all the time. I could get audited, and then the IRS could say, well, that's an awful lot of money you spend on your cell phone bill for your company. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I actually have a separate phone with a separate number, And that much smaller bill, those are my personal calls. See, because I actually know enough to at least cover myself by having a separate dedicated phone for my private stuff that's different from my company phone.
Anybody who thinks this is going to get Trump is crazy because it's the CFO who's been charged.
This is
And
just,
the
this is
CFO
nuts.
was paying himself.
Well, the thing is that they think they arrested the CFO to roll on Trump. That's what they
This
convinced
is-
That's
themselves.
exact. I agree with Serenity.
This is
He's
the
not,
ultimate.
he's not going
the
to do it
ultimate
for this
nothing
kind of
burger.
small potatoes.
I know, but they're
Nobody ever
stupid.
goes to jail for something like this ever. This
Well,
is
even if
nothing.
they do, because this is the Southern District of New York, and they are on they have been on a perpetual crusade, and they're assholes. It is one of the most annoying federal districts in the country.
Well, let me
and
read a little bit from the
But
thing here, just to preface it. Go
But
ahead.
just one thing about the CFO. If they think they're going to get the CFO to roll, it's going to be he said in court. I did no such thing as all Donald Trump has to say if the CFO tries to rat on him, and they will have nothing.
I sincerely doubt that Trump was involved in this scheme, even if this scheme is the worst possible, even the worst interpretation of this. I doubt that Trump has the time or the energy to get involved at this level with this
Also,
something like this.
does it feel like Trump?
No.
No.
It doesn't feel like Trump.
It's petty Annie bullshit.
Yeah, it's not something he would do. Yeah, that small, exactly, small potatoes. I agree.
Well, let me read a little bit of this thing
Okay,
here, just to get started. Okay, an indictment unsealed Thursday by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, who campaigned on the "I'm going to nail Trump" thing, by the way.
Yeah.
Charged the company and an entity called Trump Payroll Corporation with 10 counts, and Wieselberg, the CFO, with 15 felony counts in connection with an alleged scheme stretching back to 2005 to compensate Wieselberg and other Trump Organization executives in a manner that was off the books. They were charged with a scheme to defraud, conspiracy, criminal tax fraud, and falsifying business records. Wieselberg was also charged with grand larceny and offering a false instrument for filing. See, this is where they get you. They start asking questions, and then they trick you into lying under oath. And this
by
is
the
where
way,
they grab you.
You know what the larceny is?
Go ahead.
What's the predicate for the larceny?
Yeah.
Against the federal government.
Yeah, it was in response to their questioning.
No.
On the thing.
The charge of larceny is that he was stealing from the federal government.
Oh.
Because he wasn't paying
That's
the proper
creative.
amount of tax. Isn't it?
Yeah,
though?
I thought
That is one of the funniest charges in this entire indictment. Is they're claiming that by improperly handling some finances in a company, you were deliberately stealing from the government. It's they've got the cart entirely before the horse.
But he had
that's
perks.
great. Yeah, he had perks and stuff, and he was supposed to
Look,
be
he had
kicking
perks.
it back
He had
to us.
an array of luxury perks he received from the company allegedly in lieu of compensation, including an Upper West Side apartment, a pair of Mercedes-Benz cars for him and his wife, and private school tuition for 2 family members whom CNN has reported are his grandchildren. Now, those don't sound like legitimate business expenses, but you might offer somebody something like that to entice them to come work for you. Totally fine. And classifying these as not compensation, so that he doesn't have to pay taxes on them. It's possible that one of the cars and part of the rent, it just depends on the rules, right? There are a lot of specifics here that we don't know the answers to. But
Yes,
this is
exactly
still
right.
usually you're a bad man and you need to pay back what you owe plus a penalty. This isn't a jail-worthy thing.
Well, I mean, look how much they say he evaded. It's 1.76 million, which is not
Over 15 years at his income level.
which is 117,000 a year.
Yeah,
Which
this
is-
isn't. He's not even in. He's not even
That's
in.
chump change.
Who's the blue-eyed stranger, the musician guy, the pothead? What's his name?
You're
Willie Nelson.
he's not
Bob
even in.
Dylan.
He's not even
All
in
of
Willie
them, John
Nelson.
Denver.
Willie Nelson, Wesley Snipes. Who else has been trying to pay off his tax debt? The guy, Nicolas Cage. He's not even in that range of stuff.
Yeah, he's not even close.
I'm not saying that the guy didn't do something wrong, because he's gone past the gray into an area where any decent CPA would say, no, you can't do that. Right.
Yes.
But they convinced themselves that they were going to get away with this, and then they got audited and they got caught because everybody has a hate boner for Trump. So they're going after them on this. Like, this is going to be the smoking gun that's going to undo Trump and he's going to go to jail. It's like, you gotta be kidding yourself. The people at CNN have been huffing their own farts for so long, they don't even know reality anymore.
Well, it's like, if you go to the video, like the YouTube videos where they announce this, like there's people going, we're going to get it. He's going to roll on Trump and did it. And I'm like, okay, what is he going to roll on him for?
They obviously
CFO.
didn't
He
read
knew what was going on. What are you going to roll on him for?
But like, Trump is going to say, oh my God, that man defrauded my company.
Yeah. Like, people, like...
That would be the first thing I'd say, even if I was dirty as shit, right?
Yeah.
It would be, and the thing is maybe this guy was defrauding him. He didn't think he was getting paid enough as CFO of a Trump holding. That is cheap pay for somebody working in New York City as a CFO.
Nothing.
And Trump wasn't even charged. This is not like this political thing that's going to destroy him. Trump wasn't even charged.
I'm not running interference for Donald Trump here. I'm pointing out that the Southern District has been on a fishing expedition and they caught a fucking minnow.
Yeah. They caught a dead minnow. But it's
it was in the East River. What do you think?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But
History will record that they caught a fish.
But it's like, it's one of those things, like, TDS has just, like, mutated at this point. People. Well, it's also mutated because it's like, now the thing, it's the standing that we've seen with everything. The very thing they claim one side does is what they do. The weird cultish, oh my God, oh great Lord Emperor, like we're gonna get, like, is what they're starting to do, because this is getting scary.
Okay. Like, yes. You've handed me a segue. I want to put this into some context, which is what the next few articles are about. Okay. So let's look at a few things that sort of fall in this kind of how did the press treat certain types of financial compensation scandals before, right? So Halliburton gave Dick Cheney $34 million payout when he left the company to join the presidential ticket. Now, I remember this at the time. This was back when The Daily Show was funny.
Prehistoric time.
So just as a refresher for everybody, what happened was Cheney was a pretty decent businessman. I mean, he certainly knew what he was doing. And he had a bunch of compensation of various types that he was sort of entitled to. And he ended up getting about $34 million total after he had left Halliburton, or KBR, which is a subsidiary, and went to work as vice president. And as Jon Stewart said, because just handing out money is a thing that major corporations just sort of do because they're nice people. The insinuation being that Dick Cheney basically got a lovely parting gift to say, hey, we really want to continue to be your friend as you become vice president, and this would be great. Now, Cheney, during the Gulf War, went on to not necessarily oversee, but we did an awful lot of no-bid contracts with Halliburton because we had things that needed doing, and we didn't have time to discuss them. And Halliburton and KBR got all kinds of money from the administration. So this certainly looks like quid pro quo, doesn't it?
To be fair,
so far so good.
Some of the things that Halliburton was doing, like if you're talking about sewer and water infrastructure overseas on large scale and in difficult environment projects, there may be 5 companies in the world that do those things.
Yep.
Halliburton
and have the financial relationships and the legal relationships to do them in that area.
Absolutely. That's kind of the point. A friend of mine worked for one of those companies. So when all this Halliburton thing was going on, he was like, part of this is not understanding at all what these contracts are for and what they are about. It may be 5 companies. He said realistically 3. And one of 3 got the contract. He said they could have low bid it. He said it could simply be business, and that's all it is, and have fuck all to do with who's vice president, because regardless, they're going to make the short list. There's no way people would disqualify Halliburton from this task list in accepting bids. They just, it would be ridiculous to do so.
Well, I mean, the Halliburton thing is just one thing. This is just sort of how the press kind of covers these things. Let's just ramp up the intensity ever so slightly here. Bill Clinton cashed in when Hillary became Secretary of State. Just another little refresher for everybody. After his wife became Secretary of State, former President Bill Clinton began to collect speaking fees that often doubled or tripled what he had been charging earlier in his post-White House years, bringing in millions of dollars from groups that included several with interest pending before the State Department, where he had once drawn $150,000 for a typical address in the years following his presidency. I mean, he is a pretty charismatic speaker. So, I mean, I can see him drawing. Well, I mean, people paid money and they thought they got their money's worth out of it. He's a good speaker. I'm just trying to give him his due. Clinton saw a succession of staggering paydays for speeches in 2010 and 2011, including $500,000 paid by a Russian investment bank and $750,000 to address a telecom conference in China.
The Russians.
It's unusual to see. It's unusual to see a former president's speaking fees go up over time, said Richard Painter, who served as chief ethics lawyer in the White House counsel's office under President George W. Bush.
Yes,
I must say, I am surprised that he raised his fees. There's no prohibition on his raising it, but it does create some appearance problems if he raised his fees after she becomes Secretary of State. You're saying there's an example? Skep?
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the Clintons raised a hell of a lot of money. I mean, Bill Clinton made, what was it, around $100 million total after he basically left office. And a lot of that was giving speeches to people that were potentially kind of unsavory. There were a lot of African dictator types that he went and spent time with, and some pretty shady people in Ukraine. But nobody's talking about that. That's just, not a big deal. I mean, but clearly this was nothing. And the fact that not all of one of the CFOs for a Trump organization paid taxes on all of his compensation, these are totally equivalent, because Trump's totally going to go to jail. I'm sorry. I just trying to contrast these things, just trying to get a sense of scale, and I just really can't get worked up over this Trump story.
Well, just to give a little relation to the Clinton, how much Clinton made after he left office, between 2001 and 2014, the Clintons together made $229 million. That was not governmental stuff. That 44% of that was Bill Clinton speaking. So nearly half of that was, so it's a little over 100 million. But
And Trump's CEO didn't pay taxes on $1.5 million of his compensation over, what was it, 10 years?
15 years.
15 years. Give me a freaking break. But hey, wait, there's more.
Oh boy.
Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, makes her high fashion runway debut in Paris.
Aye. What the fuck?
Being second daughter has its perks. Vice President, Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, made her debut on the French high fashion scene in Paris on Wednesday. Emhoff walked the runway for the fashion company Don't Care in its first haute couture show since 1967. How's it pronounced?
Balenciaga.
Balenciaga, okay.
Yeah.
Balenciaga couture, thank you, congrats to her name, and the whole Balenciaga team, truly amazing. The 22-year-old model wrote on Instagram, Emhoff added several photos of her getup for the runway walk featuring the idiosyncratic and gender-fluid designs of the fashion house.
It's nice to see
that
Napoleon
is-
Dynamite getting work after his film.
Well, she actually doesn't look too bad in that picture. I will be completely fair. I will be fair.
I can see
is
this
funny that-
could be a fashion thing, but don't think for a second that she won. She got
Oh, I
this
know.
position for any other reason than the fact that she's
Yeah.
the VP.
That is
It is
stepdaughter.
funny though that you say that functional, because Pete just said the same thing in chat. Is that Napoleon Dynamite's younger sister?
Good.
Yeah.
Well played. Well played.
She's
indeed.
only been a model for a few months, and she's already been included in several high-profile gigs, including Balenciaga and New York Fashion Week. She added a modeling deal with IMG Models to her resume and debuted her own line of knitwear earlier this year. The flood of
IMG is a
accolades
big
and
deal, by the
sudden
way.
success. Yeah, it is. The flood of
Sudden
accolades and
success.
sudden success
What
seems
did
to
she
be
succeed
quietly raising eyebrows in the world of fashion.
What you ask, Skep?
What great thing has she done? What noteworthy thing has she done? Has
She's
she
not-
discovered an important medicine? Is she a war hero? Why is she in our face?
It's
Why
fashion,
would
bro.
one look at a fashion model who looked like that if they weren't related to somebody? Oh, and she doesn't shave her armpits. How delightful!
Yeah, how
Well,
cosmopolitan.
it's one of the she isn't
It's like a
even like
longshoreman.
she doesn't even have the weird face that some high fashion models have. I don't think she has the height. I think she's like 5'8", so she's
Yes.
not even as tall
Big
as they
square
want her
face.
to.
They would never pick her.
Yeah, they wouldn't want that. They want the more like alien looking one where the eyes are very big, and
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
it's like, bitch.
long,
Balenciaga-
languid fingers and everything.
But
Well,
this is
Balenciaga-
totally normal. This is totally normal, right?
Well, I mean,
Can-
it kind of is because the Hadid sisters got their jobs and their high fashion models because of the name. Kendall Jenner got hers because of her family. This is not uncommon.
There are
Um,
7.5 billion people on this planet.
Well, I mean,
Half
like,
of them, slightly more than half of them, are women. Of those, a handful of them fall in this particular age range. I'm just saying she had a lot of competition.
Your
She
entire
did, but
position
she didn't.
description is don't eat too much.
Yeah, but
Lay
can
off
you-
the paste.
It's
scroll
an
back
easy
up to
job.
the,
It's not a hard job to do. And these are not
Sure, Geo.
intellectually
What am I
capable
scrolling up
people.
to? Is
Just scroll back to the
is
face
This what you
and-
want?
Well, I just say, just scroll back to the face, and then compare that.
Do you
to
want this
Napoleon
face, or do you
Dynamite's.
want one of the other faces?
But it doesn't matter. I'm just
This
saying,
face?
I think that one right there, the Instagram post. Go back down, Harry.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
With that
There's your
Compare
face
that-
for you. Okay.
compare that to the Napoleon Dynamite face I pulled up here on my side. It's just like, I'm sorry. It's just-
There. Oh, okay. Let's see. How do I?
Him big and him. Put him in
Yeah.
solo.
There you go.
That is awful.
That is. That's
Lord have
great.
mercy.
Thank you for that.
Lord have mercy on our souls.
Okay. All right, but this is not the only example. Let's keep going, shall we? So this is Kamala Harris's stepdaughter. She's doing well, and of course, the pasty resistance, budding young artist. Blank page. Oh, there we are.
There we go.
Hunter Biden. He is a fine artist at the Georges Bourget's Gallery in New York and Berlin. So they've come up with this incredibly great scheme where Hunter Biden, instead of just selling his paintings for $500,000 to individual investors, they're going to have a gallery sell the paintings for him, and then Hunter's not going to know. There's no possible way he could know who is paying all this money to the Biden family, because the gallery's going to sell it, and then they're not going to tell him who has the painting. This is an airtight system which is going to make sure that they don't use money laundering through art to basically funnel money into the Biden family in order to influence American foreign policy.
Thank
Doc,
God.
This totally
comrade,
could
I
not
would
happen.
love to buy 15 paintings from this Hunter Biden.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's-
it's completely. This is airtight. This is airtight. There's
I am
no way this system can
So
be corrupted.
relieved. So
Yeah, it's
Not
not
only
like
are
they
they
can
not
walk
going to
up
tell
to him and go,
him, yeah, they're not going to tell us. So what they're effectively doing is hiding it completely, so we won't know. The American public won't know who's paying the money either. And all they have to do is just go on Telegram or whatever and say, "Oh, by the way, Hunter, I'm the guy that bid, 500,000.01 rubles. It's me, your new buddy Ivan."
Rupees. Rupees. No.
Because unless you can monitor all of his electronic communication, which wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea based on some of what's supposedly on his laptop.
Well, I mean, they probably are.
Yeah, I don't see the system as particularly airtight. Now, there are some people that are talking about this. Let's see. We've got some of his selected works. We've got this one.
The thing is, if it wasn't done by him, these would actually be kind of interesting. But they had a stain because of him.
Well, it's kind of interesting, but it's not $500,000 interesting.
Oh yeah, no.
No.
It's just
Go ahead,
yeah,
Teodes.
No, it's fine. I
no.
had a pun, but then I realized it wasn't very good, so forget it. Don't mind me.
Are they ever?
I mean, we're not saying that the guy shouldn't make art.
True, but still. Okay.
I'm not saying the guy shouldn't make art. I'm simply saying that the amount of money that he's receiving seems kind of suspicious.
You forgot the air quotes on art.
Well, I'm not really qualified to judge this. I
You are.
This
You have
actually,
eyeballs.
this squiggly thing kind of reminds me of what certain parasites look like under an electron microscope.
Yes.
I was about to say,
And
Segmented
they're
bowl
swirling around a
worms
crystal.
there.
And segmented worms.
Need
Annelids.
I remind you, Harry, that it wasn't too long ago someone took off their shoes and put them up next to a wall in an art gallery, and people thought it was an art piece. So that's where we're at right now.
Someone taped a banana to a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't terrible, I suppose, but it's whatever.
But it's like waiting room poster board.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Well, you can't prove it. See, the thing is, we can't prove that this is influence peddling. We can't prove any of this stuff. Whereas with the Trump thing, there's actually records to back up all of the stuff. And of course, it's going to be this big scandal. I just can't be bothered. This whole Trump tax thing is like ridiculous. And there are people who are pushing this, just saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to see people go to jail." Really? Anybody who goes to jail over that Trump thing, honestly, that just seems like they've essentially weaponized an audit.
I mean,
When have the Democrats ever done that before?
Obama did.
I was going to say, excuse me.
Yeah.
They will try. Because, my God, look at what they did to Carter Page.
Yeah.
Look at what they did to Papadopoulos. Look at it. I mean, if you are a friend of Donald Trump's, if you have worked for him at any rank, just keep your head on a swivel. They'll come after you to try to get to him.
Well, this is the thing I think is kind of interesting, is that I think it's scaring them more because they can't even get people to really turn on him too much. And I think that terrifies them because they're used to people just being able to turn like that. And it's like, I think they're starting to realize he's not a bad guy, so now they're even more scared. Like, he's not perfect, and I'm not going to sit here and say he's an angel and all this shit. But, like, the amount of people that could have just made shit up and they would have gone with it just to get these people off their back, and they haven't, is interesting to me.
Other than Michael Avenatti, and he was a dirty piece of shit to begin with.
The
Sleazy
porn
porn
lords
lawyer
in
Michael
jail.
Avenatti. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about kind of where my yardstick is for measuring outrage on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just can't get worked up about the Trump thing, and neither should anybody else, honestly. It's just,
No.
You lied, you underreported, here's your fine, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that work called St. Thomas 2020, that looks like a casino carpet.
It does. It does look like casino. Boy, that is exactly right.
Because casino carpets are made like that to hide blood.
2000 hot,
waste.
Especially when they started to brighten it up a little bit. Yeah, very
So you
good.
think we should shine a black light on it, Prospero? Is that what you're
Oh,
suggesting?
yeah.
Luminol.
You'd probably go blind.
I'd
Doesn't
have a,
really
I-
really show stains.
Okay.
I'd check to I'd have a drug sniffing dog go over the art before I'd purchase it.
Well,
Yeah.
Tricky apparently blew through a straw on some of it to move the paint
Yeah.
around. That would just set the dog off and kill
Well,
it.
he knows his way around a straw. So
I mean, we already know that there's black marks on his record. Do we really want to know what other marks there are on his paintings?
I mean, by the
Yes,
laptop,
if-
we know what they are.
But other than that kind of purplish one over on the right reminds me of sound suppression boards that are put up in restaurants
Mhm.
that are covered with like RD fabric.
Yeah, because
Maybe he's trying to tell us
multipath
something.
distortion makes old people with hearing aids very unhappy.
Mhm.
So fix your acoustics, people.
Maybe he's trying to tell us something. Maybe he's trying to send a message.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm going
there's
full
definitely a
theory. I'm
message.
sorry. I'm sorry.
But it's
I
nice that
just-
he's doing so well. Given that he is in his
It's so
50s.
poor.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Look at
Yeah.
that brooding artist.
What?
I was gonna say it's sort of like what was it? Angry Cops with an episode 2 of this old crack house where he's talking about the wall flooring. Where it's like somebody took innards and stuck them in paint and started stamping across the wall, going, "I did it for you, Ma."
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one more story to go. I think we've made our point as far as the Hunter Biden thing goes,
Yeah.
and I'm
You
sure
have.
we will be revisiting that again. Now, this is fantastic because who thought that an African American spelling bee champ would be something that would happen within our lifetime? And look at how happy Zayla, I guess her name is pronounced as.
Yes.
Look at how happy she is. That is a look of pure joy. Okay.
It's
And I'm
look, I
definitely
got
gonna
you,
have-
bitch.
I'm going to have to fight really, really hard not to be really sarcastic. So brace yourselves. Zayla Avant-Garde, yes, her name is Zayla Avant-Garde, 14 from Harvey, Louisiana, celebrates after winning the finals of the 2021 Scripps National Spelling Bee at Disney World.
Woo!
Okay.
That's enough to celebrate being in Disney World.
Now, this piece from the AP is just...
Glowing.
It is glowing. It's a bit much. So it really is a lot. Okay, Zayla Avant-Garde understood the significance of what she was doing as she stood on the Scripps
Lord.
National Spelling Bee stage, peppering pronouncer Jacques Bailey with questions about Greek and Latin roots. Zayla knew she would be the first African-American winner of the bee. She knew black kids around the country were watching Thursday night's ESPN2 telecast.
No, they weren't.
Okay, no, they weren't. They were literally doing anything else other than watching ESPN2.
Minecraft. And
Right.
Waiting to be inspired and hoping to follow in the footsteps of someone who looked like them.
Yeah.
She even thought
No.
of Magnolia Cox, who in 1936 became the first black finalist at the Bee and wasn't allowed to stay in the same hotel as the rest of the spellers. Okay, which is
Citation
terrible.
needed.
Yeah,
It was
but that was a long
1936.
freaking time ago.
Not actually the first black champion. I mean, she's the first African American
I-
woman.
I'm saying citation in terms of the statement they made of her saying she even thought of this character.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
But she never let the moment become too big for her. And when she heard what turned out to be her winning word, Murraya, a genus of
Maria trees.
tropical
Maria
Asiatic
trees.
and Australian trees, she
Yeah.
beamed with confidence. It was over. This is her.
No,
beaming
she
with
didn't. She
confidence.
asked a question. And she asked
Yeah.
a question, and they actually gave her a reply to the question she asked. And I am not running down her capabilities at
Oh,
all.
no.
I think she legit was there because she is she really, really seems to know her word origins.
She really does. That's true.
Yeah.
Root origins.
I was
But
impressed.
she asked a question, and one of the answers I would have considered to be leading.
Mhm.
Um,
Of course, you probably have a pretty lawyerly eye for that sort of thing.
well, she said, Maria, is it like related to like a comic, an American comics name? And it's like, oh, you're talking about Bill Murray. And then one of the guys said something along the lines of being on the right track.
Oh, really?
Oh, dear.
So that really,
Wow.
That's a pretty heavy push.
Yeah,
That is really outside the rules.
And it was an offhand comment because she said origin again, please, and it's Latin from Swedish for Moreo.
Oh, Lord. That's a oh boy.
But if you can find the clip, I actually cringed afterwards because I thought, wait a minute, he said something that would be considered a push.
No, I would consider it a push, but there's a deeper story here. We're not here
the
just to make fun of her
condescension
stupid
of this
picture.
is annoying to me.
That's one part of it.
Yeah, because
The condescension of it is one part of it, but I think we're going to want to talk about her family just ever so slightly. But let me move this forward here. The Bee, however, has been a showcase for spellers of color over the past 2 decades. This is just as bad as what they used to do when white people would be condescending about black people. See, he's so well spoken. He's so well spoken. It's like this is basically the modern company. She can spell so well. Look at her, so black, so spelly. It's just This is just freaking terrible. Like somehow her victory means something different because of the color of her skin. No, I mean, well, we'll get to a little about what her training routine was here. So it says, with kids of South Asian descent dominating the competition. Gee, anybody who's ever looked at a spelling bee in the last 20 years kind of already knows about this.
14-year-old Indian boy wins. 14-year-old
Yeah.
14-year-old Indian boy, 13-year-old Indian boy. Oh boy, he's young.
Well, let's see if this gets your spider sense going, because this was part of mine. Zayla has other priorities, which perhaps explain how she came to dominate this year's bee. The 14-year-old from Harvey, Louisiana, is a basketball prodigy who owns 3 Guinness World Records for dribbling multiple balls simultaneously and hopes one day to play in the WNBA or even coach in the NBA. She described spelling as a side hobby, even though she routinely practiced for 7 hours a day.
That's a
Now-
parent push.
Let's unpack this, shall we?
Oh, Harry, I found the moment where they have the interaction with her last.
Oh, okay. Now, as you said, this is a parent push. Now, I can't really get into this without doxing myself or violating somebody else's privacy, but I did have opportunity to run into one of these kids who was sort of similarly pushed, and this was an academic sort of thing. And you kind of see this, the fathers a lot of times didn't really get where they want to be in life. So they take these kids and try to mold them into something to just get attention. And this 3 Guinness World Records for dribbling multiple balls simultaneously sounds like just version 1.0 of, hey, little Magic, why don't you play with these basketballs and see if we
How
can
can
get
I
a
make
world record?
everybody look at me?
Yeah. This is nothing. I'm not saying anything negative about her, other than the fact she's got a goofy looking smile. I mean, none of this is about her. This is about her and her stupid father.
Well, that freeze frame picture is not flattering. She wasn't. I mean, she just did not look that spastic when she won.
Look at
No.
her father's name.
Pat gets it. Sports dads.
Yeah.
But not just sports dads. She decided that the guys, he'll anything that will basically bring fame to her and then by extension him.
Yeah, Pat's
What
right.
is with their last names? Like, it's so weird.
And just looking at some of the final words in the final rounds, that was one of the easier.
But 7 hours a day is not a
Yeah.
side hobby. I'm sorry, 7 hours a day is like you should be clocking in and clocking out and getting a paycheck. 7 hours a day means that, she got managed and groomed for this.
Oh, yeah.
And as lots of Asian kids have for, time immemorial. When I first saw this and read that thing, I was thinking, man, there's an awful lot of Asian kids that are going to be grounded for a very long time.
Her dad's first name is Jawara.
Yeah,
That-
Space time.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
last name is-
Jawara Spacetime is the dad's name, but yeah,
course.
Jawara
Of
makes
course
it
it
me
is.
think South Asia a little bit.
Space time.
no,
but
this
he-
is just terrible.
He
Yeah.
chose the last name avant-garde for jazz. Like,
Of-
it's so pretentious.
It's
yeah,
it's at least she didn't get named like Chiaroscuro or however you pronounce that. That's just
Chiaroscuro.
terrible.
Chiaroscuro. Yeah.
Thank God. I'm very bad at pronouncing things. I would not. I'm actually terrible at spelling.
Chiaroscuro.
You would not win the spelling bee.
I would not win the spelling bee.
Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Quick, Harry,
Yeah.
spell Thanatophilia.
No, I'm not going to do any such thing. I'm not here performing.
Psychagogic.
Okay.
Come on, do it.
So, so she's been, being tutored here. This is that when she started to take it more seriously, began working with a private coach, Cole Schaefer-Ray, a 20-year-old Yale student and 2015 Scripps runner-up. Usually, to be good as Zayla, you have to be well connected in the spelling community. And I'm just like, I don't even know what that sentence means.
What this is
How do you have to be well connected in the spelling community? What does that have to do with 7 hours a day with a
intellectual
dictionary?
Munchausen's by proxy.
Yeah,
The-
What the hell are you people even talking about?
These are the people who schedule Chinese lessons for their 18-month-old kids. I mean, they are the hyper competitive parent, compensating for their own lack of success, usually, or notoriety, or whatever the hell they were looking for. Hyper managed kids. She's likely to be an extremely anxious young girl. She is probably going to have relationship problems with males because the only thing she knows how to do is seek their approval, because I think dad has trained her to seek his approval by being his performing rabbit.
Well, if she finds a
And
nice
she's
nice
bright.
male font nerd out there, he might want to date her just because her name is avant-garde.
If she ends up in the Big Bang Theory in real life, this would be great, because her dad said she liked to do complicated math in her head. That's great. If she just ends up as a nerd, it any more of a nerd than she already is, because the poor kid probably.
You know that she has her friends.
Oh God, not spending 7 hours a day practicing spelling.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like summertime spelling camp is the most popular thing, okay? That's fine. I mean, intellectual growth in kids, there are always going to be little unusually talented people or people with gifts, copious memories, things like that. I'm just concerned that nobody has asked her what she wants to be.
Yeah, I'm worried about this kid.
Yeah,
like
she's
I said,
at the
I
age
saw one
that
of these young prodigy types, and I had firsthand experience dealing with the kid, and he was not doing work at the same level as all the other people. He'd been pushed way further than he should have been, and didn't really have the maturity to deal with a lot of the older people that he was working with. And the father would follow him to school and stand out in the hallways and look to make sure that he saw the kid was sitting at a desk. Just nuts. These poor kids. I mean, Britney Spears being in a conservatorship, and then being exploited for all this time to basically make money for everybody.
If
she
she
finally
had-
got smart and said, I could just stop working, and then what will you people do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if she is, I mean, she very well may be. She also could be an inveterate liar. It's impossible
Yeah.
to tell, because Brittany is highly, highly unstable, as indicated in the past. I mean,
Good. She can fail on her own. as
You
an
almost
adult.
need to literally make somebody else skin mask and send her to a psychiatrist in another country to be evaluated, to get a fair shake on an evaluation for her, because she's just too notorious.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing there. Her public displays of mental illness are well recorded, and so getting to the truth it is almost impossible. And I mean, any father who is following a kid to school and standing out in the hall and doing that kind of thing needs to be locked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, these poor kids.
There was a teenager who went to a college near here, and it was interesting because the college and the parents did not send. This kid finished all his high school work at like age 12.
Mm-hmm.
But the college would not take him. And they didn't send him. They didn't send him, by the way, to, they weren't trying to get him into Harvard or Yale or someplace like that. They were trying to get him into a...
If he was out of high school by 12, there are any number of Ivies he'd be welcome at.
Well, yeah, but they didn't, number one, they didn't want to send him to one. Because they didn't want him to be the black swan.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And the school...
Gonna kind of be that anywhere.
Yeah, he was already very, very young, but he was going to, actually, I think he went to the school that Sanguine attended.
Oh, really?
And they were like, no, we don't take anybody that young. But that's a small college where he had hopes of a more normal shot at completing his bachelor's degree work and not getting fucked in the head for being 14 on a college campus. So that he'd still have the external social life with peers and not end up being isolated like geniuses can be. And I thought he's got a much better chance because where he was going to make his mark anyway was going to be in his graduate and doctoral studies. He needed to tick the box on the BS to get into those programs.
Yeah.
And going to just a Midland school was going to be fine because everything else about him was going to speak for him when it came to acceptance in a graduate program.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time
he still has to do his achievements and everything else. So,
Yeah.
excelling at the high school stuff doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be massively successful in graduate school. But it's sure it's a good start. It's a really good start.
He's not doing anything wrong yet.
And and the thing is that by age 18 or 19, being in graduate study would not be so ridiculously emotionally accelerated as it would be to be there at 15 or 14. They were deliberately holding him back, so to speak. I mean, some people were irritated by that. And I thought, no, they're trying to make sure that he is not a bundle of anxiety and tiny psychoses by the time he's a full-fledged adult by being just super whiz everywhere he went. And in a smaller school, you would find people being a little less, that's the genius, than you would maybe some people taking him under their wing.
What's that like, Gary?
Different trajectory. But if you want to make people hate you, I can give you some suggestions on how to run your early life. So Zayla came away with $50,000 in cash and prizes. And I hope maybe Britney Spears' money manager can help her.
The second black woman, not the first, the second black woman to win the spelling bee. The first black woman was from Jamaica. She's not the first. She's the second, even though the article implies that she's the first. They do everything.
Well, Jill Biden was there.
Yeah,
Jill Biden was there, so that makes it, historic, right?
I do think they mentioned in the article when I was reading through it that they did mention the other name, but just in passing briefly. So yeah,
yeah, it's in the. I saw that in the article.
Oh, is it in the article? Okay.
That she had moved see, she had moved to the United States, so she wasn't the first, actual African American. But be careful with that, because what are you going to say about Kamala?
Yeah. Well, it's like the person who does the YouTube channel Just Thinking Out Loud. She's from I think I want to say she's from maybe it's from Jamaica as well. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at after trying to look up again. But yeah, she came in, and because she'd spent so long practicing her English and really refining it, one of the things that she encountered was she was not welcome amongst some of the more African American populations in her college, because they felt she wasn't she wasn't part of their culture per se.
She was acting white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she wasn't speaking black. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is this article is patronizing as hell. These people are all terrible, and I hope this girl has a much better life than I fear she's going to with such a terrible father.
Pray for that
And,
child. Pray for that
Yeah,
child.
and
No kidding.
with that, we have finished the last article we had scheduled for tonight. So, any final thoughts from our cast and crew here?
Yeah.
Time is an
Nope.
illusion. Lunchtime doubly so.
I like that.
Sounds
Anybody
good,
else?
guys. Pleasure to be with you tonight.
It was
No.
good. This was a good one. Nice and information packed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is a
I
good
hope
one.
everybody had a
show.
good time. I sure enjoy putting these together. I really enjoy hanging out with you, and the chat was really lively tonight. So I think this is a fantastic show.
blame Terry for
Please,
that
again, one last time, I'm going to show a little bit. Hit that like button, folks. And if you know anybody who might actually enjoy this show, I think it's pretty well set up for delayed viewing. If you watch something else normally at this time, consider listening to us afterwards. And with that, the zoo is closed. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.